Hey, there we go. Everything showed up finally. I wasn't sure if I was actually live or not there for a second. So I'm going to put in some of my nicotine free chew. Actually, rubbing snuff for a good long while. And this isn't tobacco. This is tobacco free. It's just mint leaf and flavor and stuff. Um, this is fully loaded dark wintergreen long cut. And then uh, so I see that I have someone. So hello. And you may ask, what in the world is this guy doing in the middle of the day, live streaming? And well, I'll just come in, get warmed up. So, and I had said, well, I come in, get warmed up, get me some lunch, and been out and about. And well, I've been laid off for a little while. I'm same mess as everybody else. I've got plenty of work I could be doing at my job. But boss closed down because over half of his workforce got a call from the health department a while back. And so he had to send over half of his workforce home, and he had to pay for them while they were at home, which I think is a load of horse crap. They ought to be able, and then so he just gotten everybody back, and like been 2 days, and a guy that had been working tested positive, and I'm absolutely certain. I really truly believe that I've had it, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I've had the virus. But anyway, so yeah, the boss just said, "Listen, go home, grab everything that's yours, and go home. Toolbox. I don't know when we're going to open up. I don't know if we're going to open up." And I said, "Okay," and that was on Veterans Day, actually. Um, this is tea. It's actually his sweet tea, but in a little jelly jar, because that's what you do. And we had just washed that jelly jar and said, "Well, I'll use it." I can't remember what was in it last. Probably salsa. I use the jelly jars for some of the salsa. No, and then we do that with our applesauce too. Those are called half this size. What you call a jelly jar is called a half pint to some, and then they've got them even smaller called a quarter pint. And I bought a box of quarter pint jars a while back because I was going to use the lids and the rings. And then since all of then, I've discovered that I had a lot more lids than I thought I had. And we ended up using the quarter pints making applesauce. And that was actually something pretty neat because that little quarter pint, that's just like perfect size for my wife to take in her lunch at work. And so she'll take those little quarter pint jars of applesauce that we made, and then she just, that's the perfect amount of applesauce for an individual to eat on their lunch. And I don't have any real goal in this live stream. I mean, I am live streaming. If y'all want to talk, anybody who comes on here wants to talk, we can talk, but I understand everybody's probably out, and I'm here. I don't want to live stream while my wife is home. We get little enough time with each other doing stuff, just, everything getting, and I don't want to take that time up on technology. So, which she's home of the evening, and so am I. But I mainly am doing a live stream just because it's easier for me to have a live stream going than to record a video and then upload it. It's just YouTube has made it such a pain in the butt to try and upload anything, and it takes forever. And so that's why I'm doing this. But where have I been? I've been here. I don't remember I don't know when I got on here last. I've been off of YouTube for a good bit. I have done something new that I'm doing, and I haven't done it a whole lot here lately either. Just because I get so irritated trying to talk about current events. But I'm on Podbean, the Podbean app for anybody who's interested. Big Country Survival on the Podbean app. Listen to my podcast if you're of a mind to. Like I said, I probably haven't recorded anything since before the election. So I don't remember when I've been on it last. I'm doing stuff here. Of course, West Virginia, the week of Thanksgiving, so that'd be last week, was the opening week of rifle season for deer. And then this week is also, and there's several other seasons throughout. Like, if you don't get it, I think after this, there's a doe only for a week. But this, you can kill a buck or a doe, and last week you could kill a buck or a doe. But anyhow, that's neither here nor there. So I've been in the woods a good bit. And honestly, I'm we're in a bit of a rough spot going on here. Just, it's kind of the wrong time to get laid off, but when is the right time to get laid off? But it really sucks getting laid off before Christmas. But I understand why the boss did it. It would get frustrating. And I have a feeling I ain't coming back. We won't come back until after the first of the year. I've been working a lot on a project me and another individual, we have a system that'll filter out the coronavirus at a high volume. Like this moves a lot of air. So if we can get it on its feet, we've sold several systems to a couple of churches. And, if we can get it, it works. And unlike the stupid masks that everyone has to wear, and unlike the UV systems in your HVAC systems, the UV lights that everyone's selling right now is a load of horse crap. It doesn't work. You know why it doesn't work? Because it takes too long for the UV light to kill the virus. By the time it blows through the system, it's not killing the virus. The UV light. Now, it will kill any virus that is stuck on your, like the walls of your ducting. If it's stuck there, if it stays there, it'll kill that. But what you're sucking in, it's not killing that. So you're just blowing it right back into the room. And what we use, the filter will filter out 97%. And the way we set them up, it'll filter out the room of the air multiple times in an hour. It sucks it down to the ground, so it's away from your face. And it sucks the bad air and the old air down and kicks the good air out, and it's a portable system. And it's not up on the website yet. But we have some other products, and if you're interested and you want to check out abundantair.com, if that's something that would interest you. Or we also do gear dryer systems for bunker gear, and you can go to the website and you can see, and all of that gear dryer systems is what's on the website. But we also are doing these filter systems. We've just been having technical difficulties getting the stuff loaded up. So if anyone's interested, go ahead and check that out. It would be great for an office setting, and I'm not worrying about this virus myself, and that's just the truth of it. But I'm under 30. I'm not in the danger zone. Some people are, and it obviously, and the thing about this filter system is not only will filter the coronavirus, but it'll filter every other virus, or it'll filter other viruses, and it makes the air that you're breathing better, whether you're worried about the coronavirus or whatever. So it's a good system, good to have, and truth in advertising. I mean, I'm going to benefit from people buying the systems, but I wouldn't be involved in it if I didn't believe in it. I wouldn't try and pitch it if I didn't believe that it worked, and if I didn't know that it worked. So if you're interested, check out Abundant Air. If I remember, I will put a link in the comments below. But so that's that. But yeah, that's something to think about. Those of y'all, a lot of people work in offices. And it's certainly something worth looking at. And you get on the phone. There's a phone number there you can call and ask questions about the system if you're interested. But yeah, so I've been doing that. Been working on the facility to manufacture these systems. I've been hauling a lot of scrap metal to the scrap yard, and that has been a big part of what I've been doing. But yeah, like I said, if you want to check me out on Podbean, I'm there. I'm on a couple of other sites. I have not gotten on Rumble yet, although I will probably look into that myself. It's not, I haven't been doing a whole lot of the content creating, and the world's burning, man. The world's on fire. But I think it's gonna. I really do. I think it's gonna come out. Well, it's all going to be good in the end, but I don't know how bad it's fixing to get in the near future. I really don't. But yeah, I don't know how bad it's going to get in the near future, but I know I'm here. And one thing I'm going to say is I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. I'm not. The money thing, okay, your fiat currency, that, okay, I'm not doing fantastic with that yet. Being laid off, it sucks. Especially, it just they're in a good way about it, but it is what it is. And I do believe that the Father will provide. And I'm doing everything that I can to be the provider of my household. Where was I? So I am. Yeah, I'm very interested in this. This system, but oh yeah. Sorry, folks. I lost my train of thought, which, if you've been on a live stream with me before, or seen me on a live stream, or but yeah, if you've seen me on a live stream before, or if you've videos, that I can lose my train. Watch some of my videos, that I can lose my train of thought. But I'm not worried about where my next meal's coming from. And I tell you what, those chickens, I'm not worried about where my next meal's coming from. And I tell you what, those chickens that I've got have been very impressive. And if anyone's interested in chickens, have I got the breed for you to get? I am very, very well pleased with them as laying birds. And that is the white leghorn. We got white leghorn hens back in June because they were sold out and sold up clear through September of just about every other bird that they had as far as hens. They had plenty of roosters, but no hens because everyone had already claimed them and already bought them. So we had birds right now, that now, I mean, they've been laying since they were 4 months old. And like I said, I got them in June sometime. I can't remember when exactly. But I've got 5 of the hens, and then I have an Australorp rooster. To the best of my knowledge, that's what he is an Australorp. I looked him up because we ended up getting, because here's how it wound up. Me and some of my family, we went together and bought chickens, and we bought laying hens for each other, for ourselves. And then we also bought a bunch of meat birds. And so the way that they sell it is you buy a mix. They call it like the heavies. So you can buy different sizes and different packages or whatever. And the heavies was and that was basically it's how they get rid of their roosters. And so the heavies was like your Rhode Island Reds, your Australorps, your New Hampshire Reds, all of your good, meat birds. I think Black Giants were there too. There were a bunch of different roosters. And those are just the ones I can remember. Well, before the butchering happened, I grabbed what I thought was a Black Star rooster because that's the rooster that we wanted. And what he was a Australorp, as best that I can tell. And I did a lot of looking up, is a black Australorp. So we've got him, and at some point we're going to be incubating and trying to hatch an Australorp white leghorn cross and see if that makes a good bird. Because he's doing his job and he's protecting his flock, and he is breeding them so that the eggs are all fertile, which that doesn't matter. Like if you're gonna eat them, it doesn't matter. But when we got a rooster, I wanted the ability to make more chickens if we wanted to. And I wanted a rooster because a lot of times, like hens will tend to lay better if they have a rooster. That's one. And then also, I wanted them to protect his flock, which he has done. He has attempted to bow up on me before, and so now I take a stick whenever I go into the coop. And ever since I started taking the stick, he has not tried to get big on me. But But a white leghorn is a good egg laying bird. Um, just about every day of those 5 laying hens, I get 5 eggs. Like every 4 days or so, one of them doesn't lay. But you can bet just about every day I'm going to walk out there and I'm going to see 5 eggs in my laying box, which because I mean we'll go through. We can eat the eggs, and so good source of protein, and I don't have to butcher them, and they make compost. So creative redundancy. Hello, how are you today? Um, but the white leghorns, and they eat. This is how they advertise them. They eat the oh yeah, they eat the eggshells, uh, which you actually we always have if they'll eat them. My parents have had some New Hampshire Reds in the past, and they would not eat the eggshells, but they also were given to them. They were birds that had been given to them and had been in a for-profit chicken house beforehand. And oh yeah, you could compost the eggshells, absolutely. But I feed the eggshells back to the chickens because it helps keep the eggshell strong because they get that calcium back in their system. And crushed oysters. That's another thing. When you have birds, you want to have the crushed oyster. That's for the calcium as well. But yeah, a lot of people, and if you don't have chickens to feed the eggs to, absolutely, eggshell is really, really good for your garden for composting. I yeah, but I don't do a lot of compost. Right, right. Yeah, either way you're going to recover the resources. I don't compost a lot right off. Pretty much. I don't really have a compost pile per se. I have a pile of bedding and chicken manure that composts. So everything that or a person not having a chicken house, just about everything that if you don't have chickens, everything that you would put in the compost pile just about goes into my chickens. Which in turn makes eggs, which so it's a win-win situation. Um, yep, yeah. I've heard of people doing that, and like I said, it's just not been something that I've done. Because just we about always had chickens, and I mean I've thrown whole eggshells into the garden before, and I actually my grandmother, she lived in town and she was big into the organic gardening and just any new gardening fad that was out there, she was into it. But her neighbor, she was always had a good garden. She had a little plot that was probably, I don't know, probably about that wide, a raised bed about that wide, and by I don't know how, about as long as her house, but she always had a good garden. But she would every morning empty her coffee filter, dump all the coffee grounds into the garden, dump the eggshells from her breakfast, and dump the banana peel from her breakfast, her and her husband's breakfast. And every morning, that's what she would do. She would go and throw those into her garden, and it would get tilled in and break down, and she had really, really good looking soil. And she did it in the same spot every year, but she always kept adding those three things into her garden. Um, and like I said, she always did have a really, really good garden. And yeah, eggshells are good. I We have chickens for, most of my life. I've had chickens. Um, oh yeah, apple, banana. Okay, yeah, you're ready to go with that, aren't you? And like I said, if you do have chickens, that's all stuff that goes into the coop. And I like the concept of organic gardening. Um, I like the concept of, having a natural system to keep the bugs away and to, yeah, yeah, banana peels. I mean, that's. I mean, really. I mean, you think about it. Once it's broken down, that's organic matter. It's going to make good compost. Lawn clippings and everything else. Um, and but coffee grounds. That's one thing that I don't. That is one thing that does kind of go to a compost pile. Because I'm not going to give coffee grounds to my chickens. I don't know if it would hurt them or not, but the white leghorns, the one bad thing about a white leghorn is they're very flighty birds. Um, they eat the least amount of feed for a good sized egg. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do like the and for one, with the organic gardening is you've got options. If when with supply chain disruptions, um, you aren't relying on Sevens dust to grow your crops, your food. um, that being said, there is a place, in my opinion, for things like Sevens dust. There is a place for the chemical fertilizers. The organic is best, if possible, but sometimes there's a reason why society uses these modern technique, these modern things, the chemical fertilizers and chemical pest control, because they work. And it's certainly not as good for the environment, and it's certainly not as healthy for you. Um, and not as great for the soil. So I try not to add a lot of the chemical stuff, but I do have them. And I do use Sevens dust. If I have to use Sevens dust, I'm going to use Sevens dust. But I try not to. Marigolds is a big thing that I have in the garden, typically for pest control. Marigolds, and then there are several other flowers, but marigolds are the big one that I know of, and I'll buy marigolds. And the big thing about the marigold and just the flowers in general, certain flowers, they attract a lot of the predators, like the insect predators that eat the bugs that eat your crops, your wasps and things like that. So, and actually, I remember reading a study that they did over in the UK, with their barley crop, I believe. I believe it was their barley crop. And um, they took every so many, feet. Like, I think, every 100 feet they had like a 10-foot section in their field where instead of planting the barley, they planted a wildflower mix. And they did that as a study, and they actually, and they used less but they used in that situation, they used less resources because they weren't putting they didn't put any pesticides on there, and they actually increased their crop by taking that 10 foot by the length, wide by how long their field was, every 100 feet or so. And I can't, don't quote me on the exact measurements, but I think it was something along those lines. And they planted that wildflower mix, a mix of like local native wildflowers. And what it did is it created a habitat for these animals, these insects and other animals that fed on the insects that like to eat the barley. Your wasps and your bees and things like that. So yeah, they actually by using that swath, taking those swaths, they actually ended up increasing their barley yield, if I recall, and not using any pesticides. And that's great. I mean, if that works, that's great. I like to have the chemicals on hand just in case, but I do try and avoid using them. I've tried the Back to Eden before, and that works pretty good. I like the Back to Eden method. At some point, I'm going to get me a backhoe out here. I've got people I can borrow it from, and I'm going to just go in there and I'm going to dig me out a spot, and I'm going to set up some hugelkultur, because I've got a spot in my hayfield that there's a spring that comes up there. Somewhere in there's a spring, and so it always, in the summertime, especially, unless it's been dry for a long time, it's always wet. So for many things, I'm going to end up putting a hugelkultur there eventually. And eventually I'd like to get goats and sheep. The goats, because they are brush mowers and they're a little more likely to to fight off predators than a sheep. Sheep kind of are, as grandma always would say, my great grandma, she had wool sheep, and I don't want wool sheep. I don't think I want hair sheep, because I want them for meat. But grandma always said that sheep were born looking for a place to die. They're not smart, and they're very easy prey animals for predators. But I am looking eventually getting sheep and goats. And I might invest in like maybe some of the Dexters, the miniature cattle. Although I have people around me that have the big cows, but the only reason I would want the mini cattle is one. Well, there's two big reasons. Although I have enough land, especially by the time the goats would get through it, I would have enough land to what's the word? But by the time the goats would get through, because goats are brush mowers, and by the time I would get through all of that, and they could, bring back some of the property. But but I would like to get some of the Dexter cattle, because they're, the minis, because I can actually butcher those myself. It's a lot easier to butcher them. Although, like I said, I do have people that have, Limousins and Angus, different breeds of full size cow, and yeah, I have never lived in town myself. My wife, she is grown up. She grew up in town, and so coming out here was new for her. But the closest thing to living in town was I lived on ship for 4 years, almost 4 years. Um, and do I make jerky? Yes, we make we make jerky, usually venison jerky. And I would imagine you could make it with. I mean, if you know how to make deer jerky, you could probably make just about any other kind of jerky. But yeah, we make jerky out of deer meat usually. Um, I I don't have enough yet. Um, yep. I tell you, it just I like deer meat a lot better than beef myself, and I like beef just as much as anybody. But I grew up on deer meat, and pretty much, unless we have the cattle and work them up, or take them to a butcher, fatten them up, and take them to a butcher. I don't buy beef unless we've done something like that, like we've feedlotted our own cattle before. And then you take that and take it to the butcher, and then he butchers it. And by feedlot, if, for anyone who may not know, and basically what I'm meaning is you, for a certain amount of time, to get a good layer of fat on your beef, that's your flavor. That's how long it gets to hang, which increases the taste. Um, but for, I think, like 120 days on average, you give them nothing but, I mean, you give them all the grain that they can eat. And I mean, you give them hay, but you keep them in an enclosure where they're not running around a whole bunch, and so they can get a good layer of fat on, and you give them all the grain that they can eat. And but that was about the only time that we really, when we had a beef in the deep freeze. That was about the only time growing up that we would buy beef. Other than that, we lived off deer meat. I mean, everything that you would make with beef, we made with deer meat. Burger and all that kind of stuff. And like, I grew up to hearing my family, my parents talking about, they had deer meat, and like one winter was really, really, really hard on them. And because as far as financially, and that they had green beans and from the garden. Um, all right, CR. But But yeah, they had deer meat and green beans from the garden, and that's what they ate the whole winter because they didn't make money during that winter because there wasn't work. And there were like two or three things that they could buy, they could afford to buy from the grocery store. And so deer meat is, and of course I'm a West Virginia boy. Deer season is a bigger holiday than Thanksgiving. And it's probably second only to Christmas around here. Um, I don't call it the week of Thanksgiving. I call it the first week of deer season. That's just kind of, if I hadn't been laid off on Veterans Day, then if I didn't get laid off on Veterans Day, then the following, whenever the next, the week of the 23rd, I would have had off and I would have used vacation to get to get paid because the place where I work closes down for the first week of deer season, which, like I said, is the week of Thanksgiving in West Virginia. So, and by deer season, I mean rifle season. Like bow season's been in since October. But the first season, everybody and their brothers out there hunting. People don't want to show. People didn't want to show up to work. But yeah, so deer hunting is very ingrained in the culture of West Virginia, and there's been a lot more people hunting this year, it seems like. And I think that it's because people know things are getting rough, and people are laid off, and they want to have meat. So they go and they're going to the woods because they're laid off, and they have time to deer hunt for one, and things are starting to get rough. And I think that, and this is me, and you can disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think if Trump actually does get into office, certain aspects of life will get better, and possibly return to some semblance of normal. But if he doesn't, and if what they're trying to say on the media right now, and Biden does get in, then I think it's going to be pretty stupid for the next 4 years. Talking about the economy and jobs, that's it's rough. And you can always tell when the economy is really bad around here, because you don't see a bunch of squirrels. And then things haven't really gotten stupid yet because there's crap load of squirrels. West Virginia actually has a squirrel season. Okay. Canada, I take it. Not living in the U.S. And then I see a leaf emoji. So I take it that you live in Canada, which is I have been as far as Niagara Falls. That's as far into Canada as I've been, and that was back before you needed a. That was back before you needed a passport to get into Canada. You just needed a photo ID the last time I went to Canada. So I used the ID from, I think it was my junior high school, which would have been like 7th through 9th grade in my schooling. So somewhere in there, and I was able to use like a school ID to get into Canada. I'm sure that it's like, I'm sure that Canada is much the same way as the U.S. You can go to the U.S., but there's so many different places in the U.S. The U.S. is like there's you can say, well, I've been to Texas, but if but you can't, or if you've been to New York, if you go to New York, and say, well, I've been to America, so there's nothing else to see here. Well, New York and Texas are completely different. Even places within New York, it's so different. And Texas, I mean, all states. I mean, West Virginia, where I'm at, which we're kind of homogenous. There's small towns and smaller towns. Um, the state of West Virginia, for reference, has a population. Last figures I got, which was the 2014 census, had a population of around 1.7 million people. There's the 20-mile radius around the city of Columbus, Ohio, has 1.7 million people. So 1.8 million in an entire state, and then a city essentially has 1.7 million. Right. Yeah, the part of Canada that I saw was essentially just like the U.S. I mean, the tourist area. It was the tourist area, so because we were there to see the falls. But I will tell you a kind of a funny story from my family. Before I entered this world, my dad and mom and his grand and several other family members, they all went up to a fishing trip in Canada because my grandpa paid for a fishing trip in cigarettes in Canada back in the 90s. Actually, paid for several fishing trips in Canada by shipping up cigarettes. Whenever they would go and visit my dad on the military base that he was on, where the Marine base, whenever they would visit, they would go to the store and they would pay, and he would just buy cartons of Marlboro Reds, and ship them to a guy up in Canada who would proceed to go and sell them and turn a stupid profit. Which was, that was illegal, and someone put the kibosh on that. but so they're going up to. Do you not have pin in Canada? That is interesting, because they are sure in the U.S. I get every once in a while I get a Canadian penny that shows up. It shows up when my change, like at the gas station or whatever. That's interesting. But anyway, so back to the story. Like, they're going through customs to try and cross over into Canada. They've got a truck and they're pulling a camper behind them. And the lady asks, it's like, well, do you have any alcohol or tobacco on your person, with you? And that's like, well, I've got a couple of rolls of snuff. And then, there's like 5 beers in the fridge, in the camper fridge. And she got a nervous, just a worried look on her face. And my dad was thinking, oh, crap, we're in trouble. And she's like, oh, no. How long are you going to be staying? And it was like a week. And I'm like, that's not nearly enough beer. So I don't know, that it was certainly funny to me. It's like, that's not nearly enough beer for a week of fishing. But Yeah, I would say pennies are probably going to go away in the U.S. Back onto your comment, I'd say eventually. Um, the U.S. has a kind of a the coin shortage going on, and I think it's meant to kind of just be one more thing. Um, but you know, um, we'll see. Um, well, that's good. Yeah, I don't have the greatest internet here. We have satellite internet, and I live between two hills with trees all around. So just kind of depending on which way the wind's blowing, how good my internet internet signal is. Um, but but yeah, so uh, like I said, I don't know. The world seems to be going to crap, but around here, everyone just kind of keeps on keeping on. Um, and with the exception of there's been more layoffs and a lot of businesses are really hurting. I know some people that my dad knew them well, but the guy he is so stressed out and has basically told him he owns an Italian restaurant and he is the third generation. His grandpa immigrated to the U.S. to this area from Italy and started that restaurant. And he's like, my kids are the only thing that doesn't keep me from blowing my brains out because he is so close with this COVID nonsense. He is so close to just losing it all. Uh, yeah, I mean that's really what you can do. I mean that's the best way to just try and I mean just do what you can now. You know, you don't want to be in the position where you have to react. You want to you know you want to have a game plan to begin with. You know, if you're really worried about like for example, and I'm looking at this as an American, right? So uh, if you like for the example of Biden, like if Biden gets in office, people are worried that the world's just going to go to pot. Um, and I think that things in the U.S. are going to get really bad if he is put in office for the first month, and then Kamala Harris will be in office. But if you're really worried about that, what are you doing now? What are you doing now to deal with it? Um, as and I watch. Yeah, you know what? I didn't need it when we were hurting for it. Although TP is, we're talking about the toilet paper, the hand sanitizer, like that's not something that I hoard or not even hoard, but stockpile. I don't really stockpile it because I've got other stuff to buy. Um, I've got a lot more food than I've got toilet paper. And just because people have known, how to handle wiping their hind end for a long time. And people have been able to do that for a long time before the invention of toilet paper. I mean, that toilet paper wasn't used. I mean, it was invented in like the 1800s. It's like, so that's a lot of years of human history before toilet paper. And don't get me wrong, toilet paper's better. I'd rather have toilet paper, but I'm not gonna freak out. If the toilet paper's all gone. I've got other things to worry about. I've got food to store and gardens to plant and chickens to feed and all of that. But yeah, there's a lot of people that just and I don't think that it, at least in the U.S. and from my position, you had the initial bunch of people, and I think it started out as a joke, and then people took it seriously. Like someone joked on TV about it, and so you had a bunch of people that went in and bought all the toilet paper in these certain areas, and so everyone else said, "Holy crap! Everyone's buying up all the toilet paper." Oh, absolutely. Um, yeah, but yeah, some people are playing catch up right now. I'm not the crazy person anymore. Not for these reasons, not for the reasons of preparedness. I'm not the crazy guy anymore. That's been a good thing about this is like people are starting to wake up, and I'm not the crazy guy anymore. They're like, this, he knew what was going on. Like I wish that I'd have listened in the first place, because now people are playing catch up. Um, and so that just is what. Um, but but I think that people just went in after the first initial news stories came out about someone buying out a Walmart of toilet paper, and then you had people who bought it out to price gouge, because people are jackasses like that. Um, but but and then that got everybody started. Oh crap! Everyone's buying all the toilet paper, so then everybody and buys their toilet paper all at once, and then the people that weren't worried, that just like didn't care, they when they go, and it's like especially like people on a fixed income, like your a lot of your retirees, and for example, and they had to wait to go and buy it, and just wait to get that income so they could go and buy it. It's like now they don't have any toilet tissue. Um, you were giving TP for others. um, yeah, we know some people who are in like the campground business, um, and they have boxes of the cheap one ply, like you can buy a box of like 400 rolls on Amazon. Those rolls of toilet paper. So like even if we ran out of what we had, we were gonna be fine. Um, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, now we were helping people out too, because now, and at least where I was at in the U.S., there was a run on pretty much everything. Like when this whole deal first kicked off Like I waited for the first weekend, like first weekend we had, and I went after sundown on Saturday, and I was like, because there was nobody there at Walmart at that time. Like the crowd had died down. We drove past it earlier that day. Right, you need food. Um, I saw a little comic, and I got a kick out of it, and it was these people, like a couple of different families in like a survival bunker underground, and they're surrounded by toilet paper stacked to the ceiling. And it's like one of the guys like, so none of you brought any food? It's like, how stupid are people? But now when this whole thing first kicked off, it was like in certain places, it was bought out everywhere. Oh yeah. Um, and I don't know if you ever have watched like The Walking Dead. Um, you're talking about the videos and stuff out there. It's like, but and part of like with the food, um, part of with the food is I think you had a bunch of people who don't cook because so many people eat out, or before this they ate out every night. You know, and I know people like my wife grew up in a household that they ate out. If they ate breakfast, they got breakfast on the way into work. If they ate lunch, they ordered takeout. I mean, and they picked up something on the way home. Like that is like where she grew up. Okay, so you knew The Walking Dead, but someone with too much time on their hands at a like a Costco or a Sam's Club took like a video of a guy working at at these places, and he brings out a pallet of toilet paper, and like the people there shopping just surround it. Like he doesn't even get the shrink wrap or the saran wrap, whatever it's called, the pack wrap. He doesn't even get the plastic cut, and these people are starting to like snag it off of. And someone took the zombie noises off The Walking Dead and dubbed it over. It was quite fitting. But I think with the food, like a lot of the issue is you had these people who they ate out all the time. Okay, so you think you saw that one? That was pretty funny. Um, but they eat out all the time, and now they're being told, well, I might not be able to eat out, and so everyone had, you know, and people aren't used to meal planning anymore. So many people are not, and you know, this kinds of things that you would normally have in a stocked pantry. You know, the amount of meat that you would need, like the amount of eggs you would need, all of the different things that you would have, just, you know, that you would not need to buy, like flour, for example. You know, anyone who does a lot of cooking, I mean, you're going to have a tin of flour, and it's going to last you a while, right? Um, but if you're not used to cooking, and if you haven't really done a lot of cooking in 5, 10 years, you know, then that you're going to have to go and get that. And so the market just wasn't ready. And not only did you have that, is everyone had to go in and get it. Oh, I hear you on that. I'm not a chef, but me and the missus can get along. We're both pretty fair at it. But now she learned to cook when we got married. I learned to cook early on. She learned to cook when we got married. Because she didn't, her, like I said, her household, they didn't cook. Um, and they ate out all the freaking time. They still do, most of them. But um, But yeah, all the people that aren't used to cooking, now they all have to go buy the stuff that you or I would have had in our pantry normally. And then you throw in the panic of, oh, everyone's going to buy it and, the world ending. And then we're all in trouble. So it's definitely a good skill to have. Yeah, my dad actually taught me how to sew. And because that's what they said, when he was in the military, you may need to sew yourself up, sew a button on, whatever. It's a good skill to have. Um, but now my wife is big into what's called loom knitting, um, and she does crochet as well. But loom knitting is a big thing right now. Is making blankets and scarves and hats and gloves and everything else on the loom. And YouTube has been a blessing for her in that regard, as she can, search. Okay, I want to know how to make this hat, and she made one hat, and it's going to be for a gift, but it's really stinking long. Like the hat itself is like that long, and it's a toboggan, but pointed like I can't remember what it's called, but it's made to hang down, and like you could wrap it around or as well as a hat. I'm not into all of the terminology, um, but yeah, she is not big on the she is not big on the social media. That's just not her thing. But we may see about her doing some of it. But yeah, she and I have worn it in the past, but I ended up breaking it by throwing it in the dryer, which I didn't realize it was in a pile. But she actually made a toboggan for me, or a knit cap, whatever people call them. A watch cap, knit cap, toboggan is, whatever your terminology is. But she made one of those for me last year, and this year's been the first year it's been cold enough. Since last year we didn't have a winter where I was at. Like we had like one good snow, and then it just stayed stupid. Like it stayed in the 50s, which and 50s during the day, and then high 30s at night, and it stayed like that really, really late in the year, which I think is tying into your grand solar minimum. But there was never weather cool enough for me to justify wearing that hat. I actually have been able to wear it, and uh, uh, okay, so yeah, 50. That's like 10 Celsius. Yeah. They told me when I was in school that I was going to have to learn the Celsius, the metric system, because America was going to the metric system. They told my dad this, and neither one of us, like, I use the metric system in as far as I need to know what kind of socket or wrench that I need size wise, because a lot of what I work on has metric bolts. Um, it's so that's like the extent of my knowledge on the metric system. Um, I like finding things like that. uh, so one of the bike rides. So it was just that you said you found a 100% wool hat on one of the bike rides. Okay, so 1 inch is like 2.54 centimeters. Okay. Um, but yeah, one of the bike rides. Were you motorcycle or when was it lying on the ground? Uh, just out of curiosity. Yeah, I knew that a meter was just slightly longer than a yard, uh, like a couple inches longer than a yard, give or take. Uh, but uh, yeah, I am curious as to where you found this. How okay, it was just laying on the side of the road. Um, those are nice finds. I -22 Fahrenheit that day. Yeah, that is entirely too cold for me. Although I have seen it um, as cold as -14 Fahrenheit, um, which like there was like a 2 or 3 week spell year before last where it started getting cold like New Year's Eve it got down to -14 Fahrenheit, and it stayed that cold for like 2 weeks. And it got up, but it didn't come up above 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Uh, yeah, we get negative. Yeah, -14 that's the coldest I can remember. And then highs of like 100, 105, I think. I think 110 is the warmest I remember it. And but yeah, it got down in my well that night. Like my well froze solid. The Because I get my water from a well, and so the tank that it pumps to, and all the lines until to, and all the lines until I got under the ground were frozen solid. And so I spent that day trying to thaw out my well, and it kept freezing over. Like I'd have, um, what's the word? I would actually put I had a heat lamp, and then I ended up putting a actual heater, like a milk house heater, in my well house to try and keep it from freezing up. And I've finally got it sorted, and it never froze up after that. Of course, uh, wells is something that I have a lot less experience with than other things, but um, I grew up and we had spring water, um, and a natural spring came out of the hillside, and they had a sand and gravel filter. We just ran through that, just basically particulate. It ran out along the ground and then through that sand and gravel filter, which is just a particulate filter, keep all the leaves and stuff out. And then it went into a concrete reservoir, and it gravity fed out of down the hillside, and gravity fed up into the house. So we didn't have squat for water pressure, but when the power went out, we still had water. But now me, I don't have water, or at least not running water. When my power goes out, and they do not run utilities this far out. As far as water, there is no water out this far, which is honestly where I want to be because I have a well, so I can have my own water. I have backup plans if the electricity goes out long term. Um, and the problem that I have, the thing I don't like about city water is when it comes into an area, it seems like then all the people come into an area. And so I don't like it because I want to keep the population density low in this area. I mean, obviously, I mean you're gonna have it, and expansion is a natural thing, and if I was hauling water, because there are people out, if you live out here and you don't have a well or a spring, and a lot of people collect rainwater, but if you don't do that, then you haul water. You have a water tank in the bed of a pickup truck or on a trailer, and you take it down to the local public works, wherever the public works department, hook up to their, pay your money and hook up to their big hose and fill your tank up, and then you've got a storage tank somewhere on your property that you pump into. And that's a lot of guys will end up doing that, and a lot of guys have rainwater collection systems set up, um, or like I said, you have a well or a spring. Um, okay, yeah, gardening. You don't have to worry about if you're using your rainwater for just gardening, and you don't really have to worry about having it clean. um, that's a buddy of mine, and he actually, as the crow flies, he lives less than a mile away from me. But in order to get there, you've got to go up over like two or three real big hills, or way down a big old goat, way down a goat path. It takes a little while to get there. But he collects rainwater, and he has the water. Like his plan is, if he buys drinking water and drinking and cooking water, in bottles and jugs, and then he has his rainwater collection. He's got a system that's set up under his house, a tank that's built in, like it was built under his house, and I can't remember how many thousand gallons that one is, and then he's got several IBC totes that he's using to collect off of his other buildings. Um, but he uses the IBC totes for gardening. Uh, I know it has been over almost an hour and a half. It's nice when you got the dialogue back and forth. I could not talk that I could not talk this long without conversation. Um, well, I probably could, but no one would want to listen to it. But uh, he sets up and uses the IBC tote water for his garden, and then what's under his house, he has an electric pump, and he uses it to run his showers and toilets and all of that. But he doesn't have a filter set up to drink it. I mean, that'd be something that you would need, is this some way, even if that is sand and gravel through a coffee filter and then boil it. If rainwater collection is your means of getting drinking water in a SHTF scenario. Working on a bag in the back. Okay. hey, you got to start somewhere. um, you got to start somewhere. And I've said it. I don't. I've said it numerous times on this channel. I was a prepper before I knew what prepping even was. We grew up on a farm, and we always had 2 years worth of food, just about in our cellar because we always had big gardens, and we always canned everything. Um, we always had enough lids and cans for lids and jars for what was in the fridge and the freezer in case the power went out on a more permanent basis. We always had. I mean, so the preparedness. Oh, okay, yeah, you had to swap out food and medical stuff. Okay, okay, yeah, you got to do that every now and again. I had to as well. Not it was. I don't know. It's probably been 2 or 3 months ago. And I go in and I look because now I keep Torah to the best of my ability, which Leviticus 11, scripture wise, is where you're going to find that, and that's like the list of what you can and can't eat per the Father. And so when I went through everything, I'm like, okay, well, breakfast, because I keep Mountain House meals in my bug out bag, get home bag, whatever you want to call it. And uh, I'm like, this breakfast skillet has pork sausage. I can't eat pork sausage anymore. Okay. This has sweet and sour. This is sweet. It's like I had to swap out half of the Mountain House meals because they all had pork as an ingredient. And I'm like, well, okay. I went through all of that, but and then the medical stuff, like yeah, like I'll change out like the creams different, like like the triple antibiotic ointment and that kind of stuff. I'll swap that out periodically, and then yeah, I usually keep some ibuprofen in there, um, and so yeah, you gotta swap that out every now and again. Um, uh, now before I got the Mountain House, I was keeping the I can't remember. I think it's like Knorrs or whatever, and it's like a pre-made rice. It's rice and pasta mix, and they just come in a green package. Real quick to make, real simple. I kept those, and then tuna pouches and chicken pouches, like like the tuna and the chicken pouches. I would keep those, and that was my food. And then I always had like some snack stuffs, um, your trail mix and things like that. Um, and I've done, I don't know, several bug out bag get home bag videos, but I don't have a lot of interest in doing them anymore at this point, because my philosophy is I'm focusing more now on the homesteading aspect of it, because I have a place to go and I have plans for going, but barring like a wildfire or say a train crashed and blew out like a train crashed and there was a chemical leak or something like that. Like I don't have a lot of reason why I would bug out. Because if it's that bad here, most other places are going to be just as bad. Like I said, I've got places, I've got options, I've places to go, I've got plans, but if things are that bad here, then there's not too many places in a feasible traveling distance that are going to be any safer. like, but yeah, you're welcome to do videos on it if if you want to be in the content create. I just kind of quit doing it just because you know it's the same old same old. It's like EDCA videos. Everyone's got one. Yeah, there's simple to make. You're just showing off your toys and your reasoning, and then there's always those jerk or idiots or whatever you want to call them that they always think that they know what's best for you in your situation. And so that's part of why I don't do them anymore. And and it's just I just haven't had any grand desire in doing it. Let's see. Kind of curious as to what time it is. Yeah, I mean, depending on where you're going, I mean or where you are, that's absolutely, you're gonna have to. If I lived in, the suburbs of New York City, I would have to be ready to roll like that. Um, or oh, Montreal. That's um, if I lived somewhere like that, then yeah, I mean, I'd be ready to go. Social unrest, civil disturbances, what have you. But and like people, I wonder at people that live like in the southern part of the U.S. in the Gulf that deal with hurricanes on a regular basis that don't have a plan. Like you see in on the news and you hear about people whenever yeah, that would not be fun. Freezing rainstorms, yeah, definitely not be fun. Um, you really wouldn't want to go out in that, would you? I know I wouldn't. You know, that could not be safe to travel in, especially not by vehicle. And I definitely wouldn't want to walk out in it. You'd have to have some good gear, I guess. Um, but yeah, no, that although and I've talked about it in the past too, but you go with what you know. I mean, I've lived in this environment long enough. I'm used to it. I was pretty much I was born here, and save 4 years that I spent kind of traveling around Southeast Asia on a ship. I pretty much have been here my whole life. Um, save those 4 years and occasional jaunts. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as the preparedness aspect that you would have to have in living up that far north and dealing with those kinds of temperatures. Um, there's a good chunk of the U.S. that you could survive in your house without heat. Um, yeah, freezing rain and negative, you know, 22, negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 40. That, yeah, you're not surviving long term without heat in there. And and I think for a lot of people, the weather phenomenons is what's gotten people into preparedness. Like people that live in around the Gulf Coast in the U.S. with hurricanes. It's like you have to have a bug out plan, or and I wonder at people that live there and they don't have those plans. Like, and I think if I lived in around the hurricane zone, I would have plywood pre-cut out and ready to go up on my windows, over my doors, everything like that. Like I would have the screws even partially in it, maybe. Yeah, but I'd at least have a screw gun ready to go and the plywood cut out and just ready to carry on and plywood up my windows. And I would have roll. Just get the get the stock loaded up and then just get on down the road. Um, if I was going to live somewhere like that, I would have that plan. Um, you know, but that and I wonder at people that, because you always hear in the U.S. during like hurricane season is people always buy up all the plywood. And so plywood, you can't find plywood at any of the hardware stores because everyone just went and bought it all up. And like, why don't you do this throughout the year when it's not hurricane season and there's not a hurricane barreling down on you? So you can lock and load and get out of Dodge and beat the crowd. Like, but I mean, and when you live out here, there is a certain level of preparedness that comes from just living out in the country. For example, my water. I have to have a plan in case the power goes out so that I don't lose. Uh, yeah, okay. Yeah, less scrambling. Exactly. But you like say when you live out here, you have to have a certain level of preparedness. It's like with my water, when the power goes out, I don't have running water, so I have to have a generator, and I have to have these plans, and various plans put in place so that I can, have water. Um, and I mean that's just one example. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, you've got to have those, that pre planning, um, put in place to the best of your knowledge. I mean, and that's I mean that's what preparedness is all about. Is you do this stuff now when it's easy, so when it's hard, you're not scrambling around and you're tired and you're hungry and you're trying to figure out what to do. It's like, oh, someone bought all of the beef at the supermarket. And they bought all of the meat. Well, okay, I guess our protein's just going to come from our chickens. That's someone bought all the toilet paper. Oh, well, okay, well, good for them. Oh, but I tell you what, that seems at this point in time, the biggest shortage that we're facing in the U.S. that I have noticed. Oh, I would agree with that. I would agree with that opinion. Um, yeah, but the biggest shortage that we're dealing with around here is ammunition. Like that's that and ammunition and cannon supplies. Those are the two big shortages. Like there's plenty of food right now. Now I don't look for it to continue that way. I mean, I've lived through enough winters here to know that we're just one good storm away from the shelves being empty. Um, it's like we live in West Virginia. It's not like we live in Arizona. We've seen snow before, but everyone freaks out, or certain people freak out anytime there's snow. Um, but it's like you can always tell. It's like, and I always wonder because everyone buys all the milk, bread, and eggs. That's what they do. That's what they go buy before a big snowstorm here is milk, bread, and eggs. Um, I know one time, like I'd gotten paid the day before a big snowstorm, and so I ended up going into the store, which was a big mistake because my wife wanted bologna or something. I can't like bologna, and we were running low on bread or something, and place was a madhouse, and I will never go before a snowstorm again. Um, I'll go during the snowstorm. I have a 4-wheel drive truck. I have a 4-wheel drive diesel pickup. Need something to back up a snowblower or back up to a snowblower. um, yeah, I have not achieved the level of the level whatever you would call it that I actually have a snowblower. No, I use a shovel. uh, oh, okay. So you have a backup to the snowblower. Got it. Okay. I was like, to back up a snowblower. I was trying to think about like backing up a snowblower, like putting it in reverse, backing it up. Okay. But hey, you gotta have those kinds of redundancies, and I have, um, a lot of people. If you've got a tractor with a front loader, a lot of people around here will use that, or like a box blade on the back of a tractor. And so that's a big option for a lot of people around here. Um, me, I don't have a big drive, uh, so I have shovels, um, and so that's a pretty simple system. It's labor intensive, but it is pretty simple. Um, that's right, no fuel or power. Um, it just that's just it. And you know, that is my plan at this point. Like I can't at this point in my life, I can't afford the solar and the wind, which I would like to eventually get on solar, or one or the other. Probably would be solar, but I wouldn't shun wind power if it would work. if it would be effective, I would definitely do wind power, but I would eventually like to be somewhat off grid on that, and then at least run something like my well. I at least have solar to run my well system. Something like that would be great. But so for right now, yeah, I mean that, and if I had the system, I would just run my well on it constantly without, yeah, yeah, in large scale. They they have setups, but you would have to really be careful on your electricity. It's like, because they sell, and there's companies in the U.S. that do. I'm sure there are in Canada too, that they'll set up solar panels on your property, on your house, like up on your roof and everything, and you're actually tied in to the grid. You are powering your house, and then any excess goes back into the grid. You're basically using the grid for a battery. I mean, it's the electrical system, and it's the solar system with. I probably am going to have to go here before too long, anyhow. But uh, but there, yeah, like I said, there are companies that do that and run them, and because the battery technology, that's the big issue with solar. And that's the big issue with solar and wind, is your battery technology just isn't there. And maybe it will be someday, but it's just not there right now. To store the amount when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing, to store enough electricity from that, to power yourself and power your house and all of that. It's just not there right now. Um, you can run certain things off of it, and that's fine. But there's a reason California has rolling blackouts and scheduled power outages all the time right now, because they went and got rid of all fossil fuel energy and are solely solar and wind, which I'll agree, like renewable energy is certainly a grand goal, but right now there's nothing, in my opinion, that can compete with coal power plants as far as generating the amount of electricity that we need, in a steady flow. Um, there are people that argue for nuclear. I'm not a big fan of nuclear, but that's just me. That's my opinion. I reckon I probably ought to be getting out of here and going and doing something. uh, I've spent almost 2 hours on here. I'm only planning, yes, on demand. Yeah, you got to have that on demand system, to keep the power grid up and running. And I'm not any big expert. I just, uh, it is what it is. But alrighty, well, I am going to get off here, CR, and yeah, I reckon since you're up that far north, try and keep warm. Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. You have a good one, buddy. I'm out. Yeah, same to you and yours.